opened the wardrobe door. I stepped in right behind her, pushing aside fur coats, smelling mothballs, even though I'd never smelled them in real life. Wasn't sure what to imagine. Tried anyway. I felt the brush of fur against my cheeks, like the one and only fur coat in our house, passed down from my great-grandmother, worn by my mother, only on Halloween. Tried to imagine a house big enough for 4 children to get lost in, a wardrobe deep enough to step into and hear the door click shut behind me. I felt the brush of fur coats turn to the brush of fir trees, cool and prickly against my skin, squeak of snow beneath my feet. I emerged a step behind Lucy into a clearing in the Narnian woods, lit by a single lamp on a snowy winter evening, and saw a faun step into a circle of lamplight, although I hadn't read any Greek mythology yet and didn't know what a faun was. Helpfully, there were pictures. When Emily was sent to New Moon, I rode in the buggy beside her, tasting her grief and exile, the strangeness of life on a Prince Edward Island farm. I had been to such a farm before, with Anne. When Emily wrote alone in her room at night letters to her dead father, I shared her loneliness, but also the fierce burn of her desire to be a writer. I pitted my strength with hers against Aunt Elizabeth, took comfort in the kindness of Aunt Laura and Cousin Jimmy. The array of aunts, uncles, and cousins was familiar territory to me, though sometimes Emily's felt more real than my own. And I had no friend like the beautiful, wild, ragged Ilsa, whose name I pronounced Isle in my head, because like fawns and mothballs, girls named Ilsa were something I hadn't yet discovered in the real world. I knew better than to think I could be daring and lovely like Ilsa, but I could be Emily, scribbling furiously, sheets of foolscap covering my desk. Was foolscap the same thing as loose leaf? Nobody could tell me. Dreaming fierce dreams of fame and glory, navigating the world with words. When Jo March sold her hair, I felt the loss of those flowing chestnut locks depicted in such loving detail on the cover of my copy of Little Women, which was helpful because before that I wasn't sure exactly what color chestnut was. Jo, too, had dreams of fame and fortune as a writer, but was practical enough to know that on the way there, sometimes you have to sell something, and of all the things a girl could sell, maybe her hair was the easiest. Even if you come home and your sister tells you you've sacrificed your one beauty, which was a bitchy comment, Meg, even if you didn't mean it that way. I love that Jo would literally sever a piece of herself before she would give up on either her dreams or her family. And even though she eventually married the professor when she should have married Laurie, yes, she should, you know it, I know it. The real love story was always Jo and her pen, scribbling her lurid gothic horror tales in her attic room in New York, short-haired and untamed. Girls in books went ahead of me, showing the way, shining their lights, little bobbing flashlights, which they probably would have called torches because so many of them were English, and frankly the word torches sounded more romantic, as Anne would have pointed out if she'd ever heard of flashlights. Their stories seeped through my skin, and I didn't even know they were showing me the way until they weren't there. Like that time I went to Middle-earth to slay a dragon, and then back a little while later to put the king on his throne. And while I loved camping in Lothlorien and riding to Gondor, I knew there was an absence I couldn't put into words, something that kept me from being fully present on the journey. And it was years before I realized that the Fellowship had room for an elf, a dwarf, a king in disguise, a wizard, a traitor, and 4 freaking hobbits, but not even one Tolkien woman? Nice job with the inclusive hiring practices, Gandalf. I graduated from girls in books to women in books, and they still show me the way. They always have. I am there with Jane Eyre when she runs away from Mr. Rochester, and also with Bertha when she burns the whole damn house to the ground, when Lizzie Bennet talks back to Mr. Darcy, when Mary Bundle stands on that box waving the piece of paper declaring the cape is hers in perpetuity. I am right beside them. I am right behind them. They are leading the way, and I walk in their footsteps. And when I put my own pen to paper to give life to women who never lived but might have lived, when I write to give a voice to Rose and Annie, to Triffy and Kit, Lily and Grace, Audrey and Rachel, I hope their flickering fictional lights will be torches, leading someone else 2 steps or 3 steps further along the way.